You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Welcome back to She's the Business podcast. Today on the show, we're talking about what you need to think about before embarking on that rebrand project that you've had earmarked for this year. So please stay tuned.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
Today, I have a really exciting story to share with you. That is with my very special guest, Emma Heuston of Ready to Boss Legal. Now, Emma is coming on the podcast to share with us her recent rebranding experience. And no, she's not a brand designer or a brand manager. She's actually a lawyer. And she had got to the point in her business where it was time for a rebrand. And she'd embarked on a project and had a few really great lessons along the way that has saved her so much time, so much money, and even saved her from certain legal action. So she's coming on the podcast to share with us her story, why she decided to rebrand, what it was that made it the right time for her business, what she did, what she discovered, and also some of the pitfalls that she managed to avoid, which would have been very, very costly mistakes. So I know that you're going to gain so much out of this, because usually when we're thinking about a rebrand, we're thinking about the fun things. You know, what does the brand look like? What's our name going to be? All of the fun, exciting, creative stuff. And sometimes there are some other elements that go into the rebrand project that get easily overlooked. And this is exactly what Emma's about to share with us in her story today. So without further ado, let me play this interview for you. Okay, and I'm here with the lovely Emma Heuston of Ready to Boss Legal. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's okay. Now, I understand Ready to Boss Legal is quite a new name, but before we dive into the reason for changing your name and all of these interesting insights that you have through this process of deciding to rebrand, I'd love you just to share with us a little bit about who you serve now and what it is that you do in your business.
I'm a lawyer and an online entrepreneur. So we have a really well-defined niche helping women with online businesses create the legal foundations they need to get them to be free, to be ready to boss and make those CEO moves in their business. And we do that through both customized work and legal templates. And that helps us service a wider variety of clients depending on their needs and business stage.
Mm-hmm. Yes, one of those essentials I guess we all need to have in our business, the legals done. And that's interesting that you've got a mixture of customized versus templates. Is there what do you see the demand for mostly? What's the reasoning for the different offerings?
What I was aware of after 22 years as a lawyer now is that there are a lot of people that can't afford a lawyer and they really need a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Or there are people that are doing, they're starting a website, but a template's going to be okay. So what I've done is looked at what can be templated to make it more affordable. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot, when you look at things, you go, well, actually that's too complicated or that's too unique. And then that's where the customized stuff comes in, which is what a lot of firms do. Most firms do that. It's just we've sort of got that path, 2 pathways, a bit like a choose your own adventure novel. And sometimes we will see someone who's starting a business, they don't know if it's going to work, so they might buy a template.
Yeah.
And then they, 6 or 12 months go down the track and they're finding their feet and knowing exactly what they're doing, and they'll come and customize that then. So it can be a really good way to do that. Or someone who's really savvy and they know their way around a non-disclosure agreement, but they just need the form and they need to know it's been properly drafted by a lawyer. not copied off their friend who got it off their cousin kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's so true, that there are, especially if there would be a simple business that, it's not complicated. We're not doing really customized agreements based on what the specific service offering is. But if it's like, website terms and conditions or your NDA, they lend themselves to being templated, which is kind of good for you as well, because it means that you're not spending your time on these things that are, I guess, the lower level jobs or projects coming through. You can say, yep, we've got a template for that. And then if they have any questions, or they could do little adjustments to it. But then you could spend your time on much more meaty projects and really where the customized advice comes in. So I can imagine it's a win-win for everybody to do that.
That's right. And sometimes some people will come to us and they'll have a few jobs and we'll go, well, actually, we've got a template for this, but this other thing, that's not a template. That's actually got thorns all over it and we need to make sure you're protected. So it just helps, open the opportunities. And some people are happy with the template and some people go, no, I don't. I just want you to do it all. Go take it, do it. So it just gives people that choice, which is really, really good. And sometimes that choice means that they can afford something they wouldn't have had without the template. So, customized is always better, but if you can't put it, or you're going to be pretty standard, then a template's definitely better than no protection at all.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we were going to discuss your rebrand today, because I think, it's such an interesting thing to change your business name and, I guess, ditch a brand that you've created and you've got out there, and you've got some brand equity that you've built up, and to change to a new name, it's a big decision. And it's something I know a lot of people think about at times and think about a lot and wonder, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? The pros and cons, there's so many. So can you tell us a bit about what did your business start out being called, and how did that all come about?
So in 2019, early 2019, well before COVID had happened, I set up a business called The Remote Expert, and I had written a book about working from home called The Tracksuit Economy. And when I set it up, I sort of was envisaging helping people with remote work. And at that time, remote work was really different to how it is now. But when I started, a lot of my clients were actually people just like me. Women who had an online business, predominantly working from home, but also, all over the place, or like you're doing at the moment, traveling around Australia in a caravan. And it became, we were actually helping them with their website terms, with their online course terms, all of that kind of stuff. And, the remote expert was still sort of accurate, because most of them are, have remote teams. So like me, I've got a team in Hong Kong and Gold Coast, but it just wasn't, and we would have to explain. I purposely at the time didn't put legal in it, because I didn't know what shape the business would take. And I think that's the real issue when you start a business. What are you going to be doing? If you had the gift of hindsight 4 years later, then easier to name a business. So it was working, and I'm, my personal brand in the legal industry and in the online business space is relatively strong. So that sort of carried it through. And then COVID hit, and instead of 8% of the population remote working, a lot of whom were business owners like you and I, about 40 to 50% of people now work from home all the time. And it's got a really different meaning, I think, since COVID. And maybe not the best connotation, because there's that argument now about bringing people back to the office. And whereas my clients, they never have an office. They have an office, but they never have it, like an office in the city kind of thing. So I sort of was like, so a year ago we refreshed our logo, which did help a bit. But then we were still getting calls, the remote expert, what do you do? Do you help place VAs? Do you place IT people? We're like, we're lawyers. So that, it was really time to own the legal. And I sort of have been planning to launch some masterclasses and some other things and another book. but I'm like, oh, I actually don't want to publish it as the remote expert. And I was getting asked to speak on remote work and I was refusing those engagements. I'm like, no, it's actually time. It is actually time. The refresh carried us through another year, but it is just time to do it. I'd started to cringe when I would hear the remote expert.
Oh, that's a big sign, isn't it?
It is.
It just sounds like interesting just what other people were perceiving. You know, the clarity there wasn't evident for them straight away. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting for you to have been getting so many different perceptions that people had on what your business was or what it meant.
It is. And then, you know, they get it when I explained it, but it was having to explain it. It's like having to spell your surname. I've sort of grown up with the whole Houston, we have a problem. They're going, no, it's with an EU instead of an OU, like the place in America. So, you know, and then it was like doing that with the business. I'm like, oh no, we've just got to do something that people go, all right, good. That is more aligned to us and our clients. Because our clients and a lot of people I know in the remote workspace, you know, they've changed a bit, their focus a bit, I think, since COVID, because it used to be really niche and now it's kind of a bit more mainstream. So you've got to look at a different way of expressing that. So we came up with, and Ready to Boss Legal wasn't our first. It sort of ended up being my favorite, but it was actually our second name choice.
Oh, right. So tell me about that.
So we had our first name choice, and that was, I thought, yeah, I like that. And coming up with a name was actually really hard, really hard, harder than it was when I started. Because when you start, you're kind of like, yeah, that'll do.
And now you're like, I don't want to do this again, so I need to find something that's good.
And when you've got all that goodwill and equity in your business, it is actually more of a valuable asset to kind of rename. So we had the name. I'm like, right. And being a lawyer, it's been really interesting because we help people, you know, people who are starting up, thinking of names for the first time, people like us rebranding, or people naming, you know, programs or memberships within their business. And I always sort of look at, well, what do we need to do? And my advice and I had to follow my own advice, which was actually really, really good from a user perspective to kind of, you know, understand from this angle what our clients are going through with each step. So what we had sort of the technical things. So what do we do about our trading names? And before that, we had a company and a trading name. And I could have just registered a new trading name, but I was like, no, I was simplifying things. So I actually changed the company name and dropped the trading name. So I did that with the ASIC, and then we've got to tell the Law Society and our insurer and all these some pieces as well.
Bank account.
And you have to go into the bank instead of
God. Kind of crazy world,
with all your ASIC stuff. And I hadn't been in there for about probably since we opened the bank account 4 years ago. So that's all time consuming. But then you've got all your brand assets. And if you think about, well, what are those touch points? How do people find me? So you've got your website. And as I always tell people, go on and just buy your domain and buy the .com, the .com.au, the .co, the .au. They're only about $8 a year if you buy a bundle and for these extras each. And that means that no one else can come and get that. And your .com.au, their .com, there's a bit of brand confusion and redirecting going on. You just want to claim all of those domains. And when you look, you should be prepared to buy on the day you look, because there are bots that crawl the website searching, the domain searching sites that you might look at something and go, that's great, I'll come back to it. You come back 3 days later and it's gone. And then someone will try and sell it to you for a higher rate. So it's always good just to snap them up. And I own double lots of domains because we changed our name. So I did that with the first option. And then, then I'm like, okay, I've got the domain. Okay. And I looked up Instagram and Facebook. That should be okay. And then I looked up the trademark register, and you don't have to have a trademark. You can trade as long as your business name or your company name is the same as your trading name. You can use that. But it is an issue if someone starts, say, I open up as Ready to Boss Legal and someone else then gets a trademark. And we've had a client last week who we lodged a trademark for. She started trading in 2020. And then just instructed us recently, it's time I did my trademark. We put it in, but in August this year, so 2 years after she started trading, someone else had put in an application to trademark her trading name. So now I think it'll be okay. She's got a prior use application and an objection, but she could have just done it in 2020 and got it through, and it would have been okay. But now she has 2 applications and she's got to fight for that business name that she has been using since 2020. So that was in my mind. I knew that could happen. So, and I looked, and there on the trademark register for this first name we'd chosen was a trademark with a logo, but registered to a lawyer in Brisbane. I was like, okay, I'm searching around. I couldn't really find much web presence. I'm like, well, maybe he's just registered and not used it, because it was a few years old and they last for 10 years. So I found it, and I couldn't really find much, but I sent him a letter, and even his email we did find bounced back. I'm like, this is weird. We'll send him a letter in the mail. So we sent a snail mail letter, and he wasn't happy because we said, we want to use this name. We can see you're not really using it from our searches. We'll just wait till,
okay.
You're right.
Okay. Yeah. So we cut off it in his email. We did find that it bounced back.
Oh, yes. So his email bounced back, and then so we sent him a snail mail, and we asked for consent to register the business name, noting that he wasn't really using it from what we could see online as evidence. And anyway, I got an email back. It was pretty angry. Sort of saying, he has a master's in intellectual property law and he does litigation and he's happy to fight it and all these things. I was like, wow, okay, well, I really just it was a bit of an exploratory thing to work out if this was going to be a problem. Clearly, that was the answer was yes, it's going to be a problem. Let's go with a plan B. So, at that point, I had only bought the domain. So I'm down about $70 from that business name, rather than thousands of dollars on logos and switching websites and that kind of thing. So we then sort of came up with plan B, which is Ready to Boss Legal, which I actually am pleased that we were sort of forced to think a bit more deeply, because I do actually like that better. And then I did the searches, lodged a trademark head start application, got the green light on that, and had an early acceptance before we did all the brand changing. And that just gave me that reassurance that, it was going to be okay, that wouldn't be there. And I'm just so grateful that we didn't, get the logo, just announce the new name, rebrand, and then that was going to be an issue. I might just let my dog out if we can just pause for a minute.
Sure,
She's getting a bit grumpy at the door there. There we go. I'll be happy now, just rolling around in the sun.
Yes. Oh, wow. That's a huge story, and so glad that you did that research and really looked into it in all of the levels, not just the business register, but actually going to the trademark register we froze.
We were at that going to the trademark register.
Okay. Yes, so it was really great that you went to the trademark register and could check that there was actually a trademark, so that you didn't go through all that process. Like you say, it's so costly, not only with time, and also, can be a confusing message. You only want to deliver that message once to your audience, like, hey, we're changing our name, and not to have to do that again, because that would really have confused your people out there if you had to change the names twice. So that's a really great lesson.
And it's so disruptive to do that, because we're still going. We still are waiting for letterhead and business cards and slowly going through, because we've got all these custom illustrations in our old brand colours on our website, which we've got to update into new. So there's just all these things, sort of free downloads, which are branded with the remote. Everything just has that brand touch point. So it's not, just Facebook and Instagram. We'll change that name and, we'll change the letterhead in the website and that's it. It's actually quite a bit, and we're just catching them as we go now. But it was even all the software logins and the email addresses on all the platforms you use, like your Xero.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Legal practice management stuff, like all of that stuff. So we're still going behind the scenes there. Yeah, yes. But we're at the point where it's got the emails, we're functioning day to day, and then we're just changing it as we sort of go with a few more bits and pieces.
Yes, amazing. Now, you did touch on something that I thought would be worth exploring because you said, well, particularly with things like the domain name, like what you advise your clients to register the domains. Now, for an Australian company trading in Australia, the .com, the .com.au makes sense. But then we're getting so many businesses now that are really trading internationally. And I don't know how many people are aware, but, when you're getting into things like trademarks, they are actually quite restrictive, as in you can trademark a name or a logo or symbol, but you only trademarking it within one country's jurisdiction, if I'm correct, and also within one industry as well. So, I think that there's this perception out there that if you own the trademark, you kind of own it and that's it. You own it globally, because we see these huge companies, like the Virgins or the Cadburys and there's huge big global brands that obviously own their name. But would they have gone to every country that they see as a market and registered trademarks in every single one of them, do you think?
They would have. So we do Australian trademarks, but there are international, like you said. So Australia's got trademarks and the classes are all similar across all countries. And there's 45 different trademark goods and classes. So you've got to sit down and work out goods and services. So, the last, I think 35 to 45 are services and the first 35 are goods, but they're so specific. So you've really got to work out, which classes do I need? Because you pay per class for IP Australia registration fees. So it gets really expensive. But then, like you said, once you get it in Australia, okay, do we go globally? So there's a couple of ways you can go direct to that country. And if it's just one or two other countries you trade in, then we say, okay, we'll go and find an agent there, or you can find a trademark attorney in that country and you can do that application in that country, because that's probably going to be the cheapest. But if it's going to be a lot of countries, then you can look at what we call a Madrid application, which Australia's party to all these treaties and conventions that, and that's a central place based in Switzerland, and they charge in Swiss francs. So you've got to calculate the fees and pick your countries, and then search on the World Intellectual Property Organization database because what, Ready to Boss Legal might be fine here, but if I went to the US and I don't trade in the US and I don't have plans to, so I won't worry. But if I went to the US, I might not be able to get it there. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. And if you look at, say, someone like the Wiggles, they've got trademarks in all sorts of categories because they've got merchandise. So they sing, they've got records, but they've also got TV shows and shirts and drink bottles and plates. And if you think about every bit of merchandise they have, pretty substantial.
It can be. And I think that's the thing, is like there probably isn't a way to completely reduce your risk to nothing, or I'll say not eliminate it. I don't think we can eliminate the risk of someone else starting up a business in your name. That's just not realistic, because to get protection everywhere would be insane. It would cost you so much money. And so for most of us who have got our own business, it's, where do you think is, like, do people need one, or are there other forms of protection around their brand that they might be able to utilize before going down that path? If they think, oh, well, trademark sounds good, but then it's not as practical because it's really not protecting me against much at all, unless they were to look into a global one.
Yeah. So I guess it's sort of, levels of protection. So if you trade in your own name, then it's unlikely someone's going to get confused with you. But if you want to say protect, like for us, well, we didn't really want anyone having a similar sounding name in our industry within Australia, where, you know, my practicing certificate's in Australia. So that wasn't going to be, you know, we were sort of confined geographically.
Yeah.
So, and we knew there's two categories. We're working in these categories. But yeah, if it was, or something really general, so if it was something really descriptive, so if I said the cold water company, something, I would never get that trademarked because it's not unique, and people would need those words in everyday language. So that's not going to work if you want to trademark that. So you'd look at, well, is there a distinctive logo which is uniquely you that you can use as part of that? They're the sort of conversations we have as to whether it's worth it, will they bother, what are their plans. So a registration lasts for 10 years of a trademark. So it's quite a good, you know, once you've got it, and then the renewal is only the trademark fee. So it's actually a really good protection. So I think, but it's only one piece of a big jigsaw puzzle. We've all got, so in intellectual property law, there's trademarks, copyright, design, and patents. And patents are really kind of technical, scientific things about how things work.
Yeah.
Design is really the look of something. And copyright is what we all write. So as soon as we write something, we've got automatic protection under the Copyright Act. So it's really important on your website to have a, you know, copyright, all rights reserved, with your business name or your name and the year with that C symbol. And say you've got course materials, so you've got an online program, if you give out resources, it should have copyright there as well. And that's something you can do without a lawyer. That's something everyone should be thinking about. And also then you've got website terms and conditions. So, you know, if your terms of use of your website are that it's information, and you're not going to come and copy, you're not going to come and take all their information and plagiarize it and compete with someone. So that, and same with terms and conditions. So for online programs or working with someone, you know, there's all of those ways in your documentation to protect you as well. But I think it's really brings back a really interesting question about, well, especially digital assets, who owns them? So a brand, a logo, but also if you say you and I ran a joint webinar or a joint course, and we each contributed some of the videos and the content and worksheets, well, who owns what? Especially if we worked on them together, who owns those things? So every time you create something or give something to a client, so if you say build websites, you'd be transferring that website to a client. So your agreement should cover that transfer of the document. Same with a graphic designer, you know, our website illustrator. We buy those illustrations to use, but is she licensing them or transferring them? So all of these things, and they're all part of our brand, you know, how she makes money in her business. So as she's a creator. Yeah,
it's really interesting, isn't it?
It is. So
you see a lot with like photographers, I think, is probably one of the ones that I think is commonly they like to retain the rights to photos that they take. However, they're taking them for you to use in your business. So whenever I'm getting brand photos done for my business, then I request that I own the rights to the photos because they're my photos and that I might give them the right to use them for their business, but not for other purposes. You know, I might say, yes, it's okay that you can promote me as one of your clients, but apart from that, I own the rights to the photos because, you know, for me, that's really important. They're my photos and they're of me. So I want to own them.
That's right. And you want to use them in your social media. You don't want to then have to pay. And I think in the, you know, not so much now. I think people are a little bit more savvy in terms of ownership. But in the old, you know, you used to have photos taken, and if you wanted more reprinted of your wedding photos, then you'd have to pay the photographer to print them. There was that kind of thing. And I think the school photos, they still do that kind of stuff, and they charge you $50 for one photo. So,
oh, that's crazy, isn't it?
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that's right. So yeah, just that ownership and the brand. Your brand is so much more than a logo or a name. It is just every touch point that people see, and that's all digital or intellectual property. So our templates are digital products, and anything from, I was looking at a gift for one of my team members who's into crochet, and I was looking at crochet patterns you could buy and download, again a digital template, but completely different to what I sell, which are legal templates.
Yeah.
But still, it's got all that intellectual property, and protecting that's part of a brand. That's part of a brand as well.
I have a question for you that just popped up, because I thought there are some things that seem like they're quite easy to protect and that you could take action against. However, what would you say if somebody, and this has actually happened to me, so I'm really interested to know your answer, but someone set up an Instagram account in my name and basically used all my photos off my business account, of me, of my kids, things that I share. And then they started contacting my followers as me, and messaging them obviously to get them to follow them. And it only got picked up because some people who know me well knew that they were already following me, and they sort of flagged it and went, were you aware of this account? Now I, of course, reported it to Instagram and blocked them and whatever else. But that doesn't really stop them from, I don't know if the account's still there. Last I looked at, Instagram doesn't take them down straight away. In fact, I'm not really sure how much they're doing that. So I was thinking, maybe I should have sent them a message of like, hey, cease and desist from using my photos. They're my personal photos. What kind of legal grounds would I have to tell them to stop stealing my photos and purporting as me?
And I suppose if they'd stolen them from your website, my answer is going to be different if they stole them from Instagram, because the minute we all sign up to Instagram and Facebook and the meta universe, then we're subject to their terms and conditions, and we're giving our rights to them a lot. You would still be able to contact them privately, but really taking it down, it's going to have to go through Meta. And that's it's always really interesting to think, well, make sure that you've got copies of everything at home. Make sure you've got an email list. Try and get people off platform into your mailing list and your internet real estate that you own, because really it's down to Facebook. And I've had clients who've had business names, really similar business names, come up and contact Facebook and say, can you take them down? They're copying what we're doing, and Facebook and Instagram, they're owned by the same people, won't do anything until you've got a registered trademark, and then you've got to produce the trademark. So that's another, I suppose, tick in the pros column of a trademark, because otherwise they said, well, you're entitled to use that. And this has been the case where it might be, you might be White Blue and then someone else might be White Blue Co. They are technically different. You could probably still register business names.
Yes.
Both of them, but they are different, but it would be easy to confuse those. So you do have if you don't have a trademark, you do have some common law rights around if someone is passing off, which means that they're trying to be misleading and deceptive and copy you and pretend to be you to get work or money. But it's also, it's pretty hard to do. And it's one thing to be right legally as well, but then you've actually got to get them off the platform.
Yes.
You've got to get them to cease and desist. And how do you if someone won't, how do you make them do it? You can't make them take it down. So that's when you're back to Instagram to get them to take it down.
So interesting, because I would assume that they're probably not local, they're probably somewhere international, and therefore our law probably doesn't have any.
Exactly. So that's what I'm thinking. And I was also thinking, you might not know, it's probably I think there's a lot of spam accounts that do that. Medibank and Optus, and hackers and scammers, probably you wouldn't know who to send it to anyway.
Oh no. I would think, well, the only way you could contact them would be actually to message that account and let them know that that's
right. And they'd be like, so So what? Pay me money to take it down, which is probably going to be the next.
Right. Yes, that's so true.
In the kind of the ransom, it's sort of like I suppose a social media form of ransomware.
Yes.
And people steal information.
Didn't even think of that. But you're so right. They probably are doing it for that exact reason. Well, I hope that from me blocking them, it meant that they could not continue to steal my photos and they could only have the ones that they'd already got. So we'll see. And
it's tough because you use your name. So you're not really going to go and trademark your name because it's yours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so I had to, when I reported it, I actually had to take a photo of myself holding my driver's license and submit it as proof that I am who I am, which, obviously I'm fine to do. But I put in the application a couple of times because nothing happened and I could see that they hadn't actioned it and it was still pending. So I'm not even sure how they're resourcing that. But, that's for me something. It's just interesting to know about. Like, we can't stop things like that happening. Like, the same as you can't stop someone from
copying you,
and not doing the research and just starting a business under your business name without realizing that they're probably, against the trademark. Like, it can still happen because a lot of people don't do the due diligence. Well, can't say those words.
Or they do it, or they just don't care. So they might go, oh, well, who cares? Or I might get some more clients.
Yeah.
But really, it's not helpful to either business if that's the case. Especially if you're in the same industry. And
Well, one of my clients is going through a rebrand as well. And part of it has been brought on by the fact that it's a similar name to another business that's not actually related at all, or not even in the related category, and they do get a lot of contact from people looking for this other one. So it does pay, I think, to do your research before you choose your name, but it's not going to avoid people in the future starting a business and using the same name as you. So it's just something really interesting, I think, to try to be as unique as possible. Like, think, what is unique so that you can really own that brand and that you can really form recognition around it, so that, should anybody start up something similar in the future, it's unlikely they're going to find or think of the same thing that you've thought of because it's so unique. So if you can, I think, just spend that time doing your brainstorming, brainstorm so many different names and come up with something that you feel you can really own, I think.
Absolutely. And then make sure you've got a digital footprint. It's sort of like when I looked up this other first choice name, couldn't find that. So I thought, that's probably okay. But I, also knew, because of my background, to look at the trademark register. But I had to go to great lengths to contact him as well. If I'd just been like, oh, it'll probably be okay, can't see him, then it probably wouldn't have been okay.
No.
And the other thing I think is really handy is sign up to a Google alert for your business name. Not only does it sort of show if you've been mentioned in a news article or online somewhere in a review, it does also show if someone else is starting to use that name, and you can nip it in the bud rather than finding out a year later and they're already established.
Yes, that's so true. Because I think if you contact someone early on, it's not such a big deal for them to change, and they might have made an honest mistake, not realized. But if you leave it and they've established, then it's going to become much harder to find a way that, you both are happy, or to get them to change later.
And it's different. It's different if it's just a name that's a bit similar, or you look at their website and they have copied all your text over and all your photos, and it looks the same. There's that very different kind of like honest mistake or actual plagiarism of your web. As to how, I suppose, how they'll receive it, but also how you need to then get serious about that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's so interesting. So many things that we've covered here. Do you have anything else that you'd think is a really great tip for somebody who's thinking about rebranding, interested in trademarks, something that you'd say just to give them that little piece of advice on what to do?
So what we do, we started doing a lot, and it's really similar to what I did for myself, is to do a trademark investigation, which looks at the proposed name, but also the proposed logo, because it can be that, we had the 2 letters in a logo that we had to get rid of and just have the words for it to get through a trademark. So there's all these really quirky things you haven't thought about. And that almost strength tests it as well, again, because it might sound really good to you, but then if someone sort of examines it that way, it's worthwhile doing. And the way we structure ours is, if we do a trademark investigation, then that comes, if they then go ahead with a trademark, we credit that against that. So I would suggest that, or yourself search the IP Australia register if you are thinking of a business name, and not just a business name. We help a lot of clients who have program names. So you might have a mastermind that you name, or an online course, and that space is getting really crowded. So it's worthwhile protecting that, because we've had a lot of clients. Unfortunately, one of them had a trademark saying, look, this person, and she sent us the landing page of this other person who pretty much copied a lot of the language and the words. And it's really easy for that. It's not just a business name. There's some elements or offerings within your business that are really vulnerable as well.
Yeah, I think especially if you're building a product that you've got some real brand equity around, so you're using that name and building awareness and recognition of it, then you want to protect that. Absolutely. Because what's stopping someone else from having a product with the same name as yours? It's
and physical products as well as online stuff.
Amazing.
That's
great. So if someone wants to get your help with a trademark investigation, they can reach out. Tell us where they can find you. How can they get in touch?
So we're at readytobosslegal.com and also on Instagram, readytobosslegal, and Facebook. But also we've got the best email to grab us on is bossteam@readytobosslegal.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emma. I think this has been such an interesting episode. We've really talked so much about the whole rebranding process. And, I think we often focus so much on the visuals and the design and, the fun part of rebranding and kind of forget about the legal aspects and the business side of it. So this is, just so useful and helpful for anybody who's in that process of thinking about a rebrand in 2023. Definitely reach out to Emma, especially if you're in Australia. Ask her for some advice. You can get her help with the trademark investigation and even with the application if you decide to go ahead with applying for your trademark.
And in another, the advice is still pretty transferable to another country. So if they are in another country, go and speak to someone like me in your country where you live.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's very transferable, I think, as well. Yes, you're right. So good. Well, thank you, Emma. I really appreciate your time spending with us today. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Do you know something? There are so many people that are overcomplicating their marketing, which means that they're running on the marketing treadmill, pumping out so much content, but still not yielding those results, meaning there are no clients actually signing up. Like, what use is an audience if they're not an audience of buyers? What use is it creating great content to share if the people who are reading it have no desire to take that next step to actually working with you? Well, if any of those things are happening for you right now, then it's highly likely that you're simply missing a key in your marketing strategy. And those keys are really simple. There are just 5 of them. And it's about how you align them, put them together. That is the simplicity that makes everything work, just like clockwork, so that you have a consistent stream of what you would consider your dream clients, literally turning up in your inbox, ready to have a conversation, ready to sign up with you without you going out there to find them. So let's put an end to cold outreach. Let's put an end to searching for clients in Facebook groups. Let's put an end to just waiting around and relying on referrals to come through from other people. Because when you have that consistent stream of clients, then you're in the place of being able to choose. You've got an abundance of opportunity out there, and all we need to do is turn on the tap for your clients to find you. So I've created a brand new training, and it's called 5 Keys to Clients on Tap. So you can guess what it's about, can't you? Well, this 1-hour short training takes you through those 5 critical keys that you need to have in your business so that you do have clients on tap, and not just any old client, the ones that you most want to be working with, that are going to make you profitable, that are going to fulfill you, are going to make you feel like jumping out of bed every morning because you love your business so much. So you want in? All you need to do is head to jessicaosborne.com/TMF for the magnetic formula. So TMF, and get yourself into the next session that's running for this training. You honestly will not regret it. It is going to change your business, your life, if you've been experiencing any of those problems I mentioned before. Look forward to seeing you in there, and let's do this.